Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're going to cook up a pot of chili. Now, like most folks, I have never made chili the same way twice in my whole life. But there's some basic ingredients that you need. You need some ground meat. I have a little over a pound, maybe a pound and a half of ground chuck. You need some beans. You can use pinto beans, kidney beans, black beans, whatever kind of beans you want. Generally speaking, ratio-wise, if I'm using cans, I like at least a half a pound of meat per can of beans. And if you have leftover beans that you have cooked from dried beans like pinto beans or kidney beans or whatever, that is the perfect chili starter right there. And you can even get chili beans that already have some seasoning in them. Those are fine to use if you want to. But your leftover dried beans, and usually if I make a big pot of pinto beans, I'll make some chili before they're gone. And you need some sort of tomato. Now there's lots of kinds of tomato you can use. You can use the canned tomatoes, you can use crushed, diced, sauce, paste, whatever. I got some sauce here. You can use fresh tomatoes, you can use tomato soup. Something you can use to help spice it. And it takes the place of kind of all this stuff here, and your tomato, especially if you live alone or there's just two of you. If you've got leftover salsa, like half a jar of salsa, and you just want to make a small pot of chili, that's a great chili starter. Just dump your salsa in there and maybe a can of beans and a little bit of meat, whatever. I'm going to get my meat started cooking, which I should have done that like the second I started this, because I want to brown it a little bit and I want to drain some of the grease off of it before I add anything else to it. And you don't have to do that. You can leave all your grease on if you want to. That's just kind of up to you. The grease adds calories and it will make it more filling. So if you're trying to feed a big crowd and you don't have a whole lot of meat to go in it, it also adds flavor. You can certainly leave that grease in there and use a few more beans and stuff if you're trying to feed a whole bunch of people. But I'm not trying to feed a whole bunch of people, and I need to get rid of them extra calories and the extra fat. I don't need either one in my diet. So that's just kind of whatever you want to do. Now, I'm not going to use my salsa or my tomato soup. So I have a little bit of white vinegar, just like a tablespoon, and about 2 teaspoons of sugar. If you're going to put either the salsa or the tomato soup in your chili, you're not going to need these. But if you're using fresh tomatoes or crushed tomatoes or something else, I highly recommend them. You don't have to do them. It's optional, but it changes the whole flavor of your chili. And I really like it. I mean, the difference it makes is just dramatic. I have a bell pepper, a yellow bell pepper. Again, if you were using the salsa, that would kind of take care of that. And you could use any color. You don't have to have it. I have a couple of jalapeno peppers that I've chopped up. I don't usually have those, but I went in the grocery store the other day and they were super cheap. So I bought some, and I actually have a couple recipes I want to use them in. And a medium onion that I've chopped up. Now, I do always put onion in mine, unless I'm just making a little bit of chili and I'm using the salsa because it's already in the salsa. I'm using black beans and kidney beans and pinto beans in mine today because I'm using cans. Now, if I had leftover pinto beans or something that I cooked, I would probably just use one kind, or maybe I'd add some kidney beans into my leftover pinto beans. I like different beans because it gives it different textures and it adds flavor to it. And you need some spices. I've got a little cayenne pepper, a little chili powder, and a little salt and pepper. You can put whatever you like in yours. And of course, you're going to need less spices if you were doing something like the salsa that already has a lot of spices in it. I like to bust my meat up pretty good when I'm making chili. Now, I don't like it pureed, but I like to get the chunks at least as small as the beans. But that's just a personal preference of mine. If you like great big chunks of meat in yours, leave great big chunks of meat in it. And generally speaking, the more meat in chili, the better it is, and the better everybody likes it. But nowadays, where we're all kind of having to stretch our dollar a little bit, it's still really good with less meat. I mean, like I said, I had about 1.5 pounds of ground chuck. I could use 4 or even 5 cans of beans, add a few more tomatoes and some more seasoning to it, you know. And the vegetables, you can also get the bags of frozen peppers and onions mixed up, like the stir fry and stuff, and those work great in chili. And a lot of times you can get those much cheaper than you can get a pepper and an onion, or especially a couple kinds of peppers and onions. So like I said, I don't always have all this stuff fresh. I just happen to have it, so I'm putting it in there. And if you got 1/2 jar of salsa and you just want chili for 1 or 2 people, that works great. It's absolutely delicious. And maybe add a little bit of tomato sauce or something to it, and a can of beans, and a little bit of meat of some kind, you know, a little ground beef or something, and it's really, really good. But chili is kind of one of those things like casseroles and soups that you make with what you got. Chili is a soup, so use what you got. I'm not going to completely cook my meat when I get my grease out. That's probably about enough, because I don't want every speck of the fat gone out of it. I want some of the flavor. But I want, like I said, most of the grease out of it. So I'm going to drain this now. All right, I've got most of the grease out of that now. I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit. And I'm going to add in all of my peppers and my onions, and I'm going to let them start cooking just a tiny bit before I add anything else in. I want to kind of saute them a little bit with my meat, and it will make them taste better. And also I want to make sure they're done, because nobody wants to bite into a half-cooked jalapeno or even a half-cooked onion in their chili. You want all of your vegetables to be soft when your chili's done. Keep an eye on your vegetables while they're cooking, and give them a stir every once in a while. And they are starting to change colors, but they're not quite done yet. My onions are still pretty white, and I want them to be a little more on the clear side. And I am going to go ahead and add a little bit of salt and pepper, so it kind of sticks to my onions and my meat and stuff. If you are on a low salt diet, and I've said this several times, save the salt for the table. Just don't put any salt in your food when you cook it, because you will use much, much less if you salt it on the table. Salt, like all these other spices we've got over here, are going to lose their flavor. It's going to lose its flavor as it cooks. The flavor kind of cooks out. If you put too much pepper in something, you can cook it longer, and it will kind of cook the flavor out of the pepper. The same way with salt. So if you put salt in your food when you first start cooking it, you're going to have to add more to get the same flavor. Okay, my onions are starting to kind of turn colors, and even my peppers are kind of turning colors. They're almost translucent. They're getting to the point where you can almost see through them. But they still have plenty of color, and I know because they're getting lighter and easier to see through that they're getting tender. And you can kind of see there how I like my beef crumbled up. If you don't like your beef crumbled up that fine, or whatever other kind of ground meat you're using, don't crumble it up so fine. But that's just the way I like it. And if you like your peppers and your onions crunchy, you don't have to do this, and you don't have to simmer it as long. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in my tomatoes, and I'm just using some petite diced tomatoes, and all 3 of my beans, my pinto beans, and my kidney and my black beans. Well, these are the black beans. My kidney beans. And I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to add in this little can of tomato sauce. Because this is a pretty good size pot of chili, and I want to keep kind of my ratios the way that they are. This is the way I like it. If you don't like much tomato in yours, don't use so much tomato. If you don't like, if you want more beef and fewer beans, use fewer beans. If you're trying to stretch it, use more beans and less beef. You know, you're making it for you. Now, I'm going to add in some spices. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in my sugar. Now, if you were using soup or salsa or something like that, you wouldn't need the sugar or the vinegar. And I know the vinegar seems strange, but if you were using salsa or some other kind of sauce, you could even use ketchup and taco sauce and stuff like that. If you were just making a little pot and, you know, you wanted some tomato in it. But all of those tomato products have vinegar in them. So, you know, a little bit of vinegar really improves the flavor. And I'm going to add a little bit of this cayenne pepper, not too much because I've already got the jalapenos in there. You don't have to have that. Chipotle pepper, the spice, you know, dried stuff, is really, really good in chili. And all the spices are to taste. And I'm going to let this simmer for a while, and then I'm going to taste it and maybe adjust them a little bit. Also, I would always serve chili with some chili powder or maybe some hot sauce and some salt and some pepper on the table so people can adjust the spices in their individual bowls. You can serve this with chips. Well, you serve it just like it is with nothing else with it, but you can serve it with some kind of corn chips or tortilla chips or something like that. Top it with some cheese and sour cream. My kids won't hardly eat it without cheese and sour cream. Brett never ate it with anything on top of it, and in fact he always ate it with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which I did not understand. But apparently where he went to school at, when they served chili, they served peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And because that's the way he ate it when he was a little boy in school, he always wanted a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's really good with cornbread. Lots of folks serve it with some cornbread. You can bake potatoes and put your chili over a baked potato and top it with some cheese and sour cream. Or make french fries or tater tots or something like that and serve the chili over top of those with some cheese and sour cream for the kids. Kids love stuff like that. Serve it with some crackers. We usually did have some crackers with it too. Just plain old saltine crackers or something buttery like a Ritz or a Townhouse. Now, here's the other thing about my chili. You can see there, that is not tomato soup. I mean, even though we put a lot of tomato in it, it's got some stuff in it. Now, you can adjust the consistency of it. If you like it soupier, you can add tomato juice, or you can add plain old water to it and make it thinner. I like it thick, I like it chunky, I like it meaty, I like it, you know, with plenty of beans and other stuff in it. And I don't like it, you know, thinned out too much. But if you do, if you want more soup and fewer chunks, tomato juice or just plain water, either one will work. And you can even, instead of the chunk tomato and the tomato sauce, you can make it with tomato juice. And that will give you more liquid in it. And if you're going to simmer it for a long time, which you cannot simmer chili for too long, like you could make this at lunchtime and then serve it at dinner time and just let it simmer on low all day long, and it would be absolutely delicious. The longer you let it simmer, the better. Just keep an eye on it and don't let it burn. And if you simmer it for a real long time, you probably are going to have to add a little water to it because your liquid is going to cook off. Even if you have a lid on it, when you go stir it, the liquid is going to cook off. You can also, at this point, add it to a crock pot if you wanted to. I mean, if you wanted to cook your ground beef or whatever meat you were using and all your other stuff, you could dump it in a crock pot and let it sit there and simmer all day while you were at work. If you make it in a crock pot, which I did years and years and years ago, don't add any extra liquid because it's not going to really cook off in a crock pot like it does when you're simmering it on the stove. So if you like it with this much liquid, don't put any extra in your crock pot. But if you like it with more, when you start it, add more liquid. And like I said, you just can't simmer it too long. Just keep an eye on it so that it does not burn. Stir it every once in a while. The longer it cooks, the better it is. There's no such thing as overcooked chili. So just put the lid on it, turn it down on low, let it sit there and simmer. I do it, even if I'm in a hurry, I will let it simmer for 30 to 45 minutes at the minimum. Because if you don't let it simmer at least 30 to 45 minutes, the flavor of your peppers and your beans and your tomatoes is not really going to mesh together, and it's not going to blend. You're going to end up with something that just doesn't taste nearly as good. Give it at least half an hour if you've got it longer. I want to share John 4:23 and 24 with you. And Jesus was talking in these verses. And it says, "But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth." There is a revival going on right now, and I don't know if y'all have heard about it. Just Google campus revival. It started on a campus up in Kentucky, and it has been going 24 hours a day for about a week and a half now, I think. And it has literally spread all around the country. And even in other countries, people have come from other countries, visited this campus, and gone back and started these around the clock prayer and worship services. And people are being healed. Their spirit is being healed. They are leaving all their pain and all their worry and all their trouble at the altar. They're giving it to God, and their spirit is being healed. And they are coming together as one in Jesus' name. And there has never any time in my life that we have ever needed revival more than we do right now. I have visited several churches in this area recently, and churches are just empty. And it seems like people are just empty. And they are going to these revivals by the tens of thousands. And their spirits, they're pouring their spirit out, and they're receiving the Spirit of the Holy Ghost, and they are being healed and made whole and made happy and made free again. Now, if you are one of those people who has suffered tremendously over the past 3 years, like I know we all have, almost to the point of breaking with the stuff that's been going on, and you need healed, you don't necessarily have to go to one of these revivals. You can receive the Spirit of the Lord wherever you are. You worship him in spirit and truth. You give him your pain, and you ask him to heal it, and he will. But if you have the opportunity to go to one of these, by all means go and share the spirit of fellowship with the other Christians who are there. Share their joy with them, the people who are being healed and who are being freed. That's kind of what being part of the family of God is all about. That's why it says, "Forsake not the assembling," and fellowship one with another. And, you know, we need that. That's part of our worship in the Lord. But please pray for these revivals. Pray that they continue. Pray that they continue to grow. And pray for the people who are going there and worshiping and having their spirit and their souls healed. And like I said, if you need that, all you have to do is worship the Lord in spirit and truth, and he will heal you no matter where you are. Now let's check on our chili. Okay, it is back to a full boil. It's simmered a little while, and you can see there's plenty of liquid in this. I didn't rinse my beans. I know lots of folks do, and I think that's mostly just to get salt and stuff out of them. And if you are on a low salt diet and you're using canned beans, you can certainly rinse them. But I think the starch in the beans, well, I know the starch in the beans helps to thicken the chili, and I like to leave it in there. If you rinse all of your beans, you might end up having to add a little bit of starch of some kind. either some cornstarch, and of course add that to cold liquid, or a little bit of potato starch. You could even dump a little bit of, or a few instant potato flakes in your chili to thicken it up a little bit. I mean, I know everybody doesn't like it this way, but you can see that the liquid in the chili is thick. I mean, not super thick, it's certainly pourable, but I like that thick. I don't like to be able to see through the liquid that's in my chili, and you can't see through that. And if you rinse all your beans and you don't put any kind of starch in it or anything, you're going to be able to see through it. It's going to be watery like that fast food place's chili that everybody goes so crazy about. I promise you, this is better than anything you've ever ate in any fast food place. Probably better than anything you've ever ate in any restaurant anywhere. But that's all there is to it. Just let it simmer. As long as you have the time to let it simmer, you can eat it in a bowl just like it is. Don't have to have anything to go with it. Maybe some saltines, a little cornbread, serve it over any kind of potato from baked to tater tots. Top it with sour cream and cheese. Add, serve it on the table, a little salt and pepper and maybe some hot sauce of some kind or something. It's just up to you. Chili is one of those things that you can make it exactly the way you like it. You can customize the flavor and, just make a pot of chili. This winter's the best time for it. It's actually blowing snow here all day. It rained all night, it's blowing snow all day. So I'm going to have me a nice big warm bowl of chili and maybe watch a movie or something and just curl up on the couch. But chili's good for a cold winter day for sure. Thank you so much for joining us again in the Hillbilly Kitchen. If you haven't already, please don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave. Share our videos with your friends, and until next time, remember to put God first.